Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to talk about cheap aftermarket parts and why I flat out refuse to use them, especially when it comes to Subaru vehicles. So this is going to be a video talking in general about parts, and then we're going to have an example. Had a situation week before Christmas with a 2008 Legacy. There will be clips after this first introduction part of the video. All of it was shot on my cell phone. It's kind of broken up, but it gets the point across. So in regards to aftermarket parts, I know that a lot of you are trying to save money. We all are, and want to get the best bang for your buck when looking for auto parts to repair your vehicle. eBay, Amazon all have cheap and enticing offers, but you get what you pay for kind of rings true a lot of times with these cheap auto parts. Most of these auto parts are poorly made, poor quality, and that's why they are cheap. Most of the time they are Chinese or Taiwanese. You know, they come from these countries that are synonymous with cheap, low quality goods and products. Not always, but most of the time. So if you've been watching the channel for any length of time during my repair videos, I almost exclusively use Subaru genuine parts, and I almost always show you the parts and give you a part number. Rarely do I ever use aftermarket parts, and there's a good reason why. We will be showing that example, one example, in the clips to follow. But, you know, there are some situations where I do use non-original equipment parts, although it's far and few between. Case in point, timing belt kits. Most of you know from the timing belt videos, I recommend people buying Aisin water pump timing belt kits through Amazon. That's where I normally buy them. The Aisin kit is actually full of genuine Subaru Japanese components at a much smaller price tag. The idler pulleys, the tensioner pulley, the tensioner itself are all original equipment Japanese. The original equipment components from Subaru are actually made by these companies, and they are repackaged in a plain white box with a Subaru sticker on them. So you have the tensioner, which is made by NTN. You have the bearings that are NSK and Koyo. You also have the timing belt, which the Subaru factory timing belt is made by Mitsubishi. In the Aisin kit, you get a Mitsubishi belt. It's the same belt, it's just not got Subaru branding on it. And I'll put in some examples showing the Subaru belt with the Mitsubishi stamp on it, and then the regular Mitsubishi belt that's not Subaru branded. It's all the same components. The only difference between all Subaru original equipment and the Aisin kit comes down to the water pump. Subaru has used for many years water pump made by them and stamped Fuji Japan. Some of you may or may not know that Subaru was under a larger corporation named Fuji Heavy Industries, and I believe last year or in the last few months, Fuji Heavy Industries actually changed their name to the Subaru Corporation. So the original water pumps were Fuji up until I believe 2010, 2009, somewhere in there I started seeing Yamada water pumps. And I don't know a lot about Yamada, but I'm assuming that it's a company that Fuji had purchased or have ties with, but it is a Japanese manufactured pump as well. It's stamped Yamada and Japan. I bought one off of my brother's 2011 Outback when I did his kit with the video. So that's the big difference, is the Aisin kits come with an Aisin pump. Well, there's no worry of the quality of the Aisin pump. Aisin water pumps are made in Japan, and Aisin is the OE water pump provider manufacturer for Toyota. So no issues with using it. I use them without any worry. But that said, there's not many other things that I will put on a Subaru that's not Subaru original equipment. Every once in a while, maybe a Moog ball joint, but cost for cost, Subaru original ball joints are about $30, and sometimes I see the Moog ball joints for more than that. So that's the big thing too. A lot of times the actual original equipment parts are cheaper than buying them from aftermarket parts houses, Rock Auto, Amazon, eBay, other online part sellers. In my spark plug video, some of you might have noticed that I use Subaru branded spark plugs. They're actually just NGK spark plugs in a blue Subaru box. And the reason I buy Subaru spark plugs is because I can buy Subaru spark plugs cheaper than I can buy them from NGK, just not Subaru branded. It's a little bit odd, but there's a method to my madness. It doesn't matter if it's an NGK box with a spark plug or a Subaru box with the NGK spark plug. It's all the same plug in the box, and it's all the same part number. The only reason I buy the Subaru branded, like I said, is for cost. So there's not that big of a cost savings most times from aftermarket stuff. Well, case in point for this video was, there's a little bit of a backstory here. I had a customer reach out to me with a 2008 Legacy 2.5i. They said that they had a water pump leak and the car had been sitting for a little while and they wanted to get it back on the road. So they wanted me to put a water pump and timing belt kit on the car. Fine, perfectly fine. Do it with my eyes closed and 1 hour behind my back at this point. But they said that they had their parts. Well, I don't like to install customer supplied parts. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, some people might say, well, that's kind of shady, but if I sell my parts, I can put my markup on it and I can make my money on the parts and on my labor. That's just how it is in this industry, especially when you basically work for yourself. A lot of overhead. You got to make as much in any area as you can. Not saying I gouge people on parts or anything like that, but I just do the normal markup that's required, or that's the industry standard between what I can buy them for at cost and what the list price is on the part. It's usually not a lot of difference. So one, I'm not making the money on the parts. Two, if something happens with the part, I can't warranty the part. If I buy the parts, provide the parts when I do the job, and I have an issue, I can go back to my provider of those parts and get them to make it right. If the customer brings me a part and it goes to fail or something's wrong with it, etc., we're stuck. They have to try to get it warranted on their own, then they're gonna have to pay labor again for me to remove it and put it back on, because I'm not spending my time for nothing. So, you know, there's always this aggravating situation that comes with supplied parts from the customer, and that's why I don't like to use them. And a lot of times, customers don't like to supply original equipment parts, especially when it comes to timing belt and water pumps on Subarus, because if you go to the Subaru parts counter, everything needed for a timing belt water pump kit is, last I checked, in the ballpark of $350. I might be a little high or low. ASIN kits for single red cam cars are about $210, $220, depending on which model and year you have. For the turbo cars, I believe they're about $230 to $260. So they're not that expensive, and it's a nice all-inclusive kit with all good quality parts in it. So back to the story, talking to the customer, they said they had the parts. I said, okay, well, what parts do you have? I do not install parts that are not Subaru original manufacturer parts. Oh, it's a kit I got off of Amazon or eBay, which I don't remember, and neither does it matter. And I asked them, well, is it Subaru original? No. I said, well, it's probably some Chinese aftermarket, something, right? Probably. I said, okay, well, I'm not going to do the job. Thank you for calling. I can refer you to someone else. I said, if you want me to quote you the job with my parts and my labor, I can, and I can quote you the labor by itself if you return this and provide me with the original parts. They said, okay, send me both quotes. I sent both quotes to the customer. They emailed me back and said, I'm going to return what I've got, and I'm going to buy the parts that you gave me to, on the quote that you want me to buy, and then I'll just pay you the labor and install them. I said, great, that's fine, as long as you get the parts I requested. The part numbers are listed. Just go on to Amazon, plug them in, or SubaruParts.com, another big place I get parts from. So later that afternoon, here comes the car on the rollback, and the rollback driver just drops it in the lot. I said, okay, well, that's fine. That was, I believe, a Thursday or Friday. I think it was Thursday. So didn't hear anything from the customer at the end of the week, over the weekend. Monday rolls around, customer says, hey, I'm waiting for Amazon to bring the parts. As soon as I got them, I'll bring them to you. Okay, so didn't hear anything else back. Believe it was Tuesday. They called me at about 10 a.m., said, hey, the parts are supposed to be delivered today within the next hour or so. I'm going to bring them to you as soon as I get them. I said, all right, well, cool, that works. I had nothing going on at the shop at the moment, so I said, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and pull the car in. I'm going to tear it down to the water pump and be ready to go. When she brings me the parts, I can just put it back together really quick, and we'll be good to go, and they can be on their way. So get the car all torn down. The rest of the day, don't hear a word back from the customer. Wednesday rolls around, and about 11:30, customer comes walking in with an Amazon box. Okay, cool, finally got parts. Get this car back together, get it down the road, get paid. Well, open up the Amazon box, and all the components are just loose in the box. I said, well, what's this? You said you were going to buy the Aisin kit. Oh, this is a return from Amazon or something, open box. Okay, I'm not stupid. Pick up components, see they're not branded and Chinese. I said, look, I'm not installing these. I told you before you brought the car to me, not once but twice, because she had called before I got to the shop, talked to someone else, and they told her as well that I would not install aftermarket parts. So she fumes up, says, look, just install them. I don't care. Yada, 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 storms out the door. Well, I was kind of in between a rock and a hard place at this point, because I'd already torn down the engine to, anticipation of these parts to get it back together. So begrudgingly, I said, okay, I'm going to put them on, but you have absolutely no warranty. If any of this stuff fails, if you have any issues, that's all on you. So get back into the shop, and this is basically where the clips will take over, me going through showing putting this stuff on, all the issues I had with it, and just take it all in. All right, guys, we are back here with the water pump leak. I've got all the timing components out of the way, and looks like they had a Gates kit installed on the car. I don't know if this is a Chinese water pump or not. Pretty sure it is, because I don't see the normal Fuji markings on it. They put some gross, goopy frickin' gasket back here instead of the single layer metal gasket. And as you see, coolant has been leaking from the actual bolt holes and the back plate. Well, here's the problem. Whoever installed this water pump timing belt did not torque the water pump bolts. I haven't broke these loose yet, because there was no need to break them loose. This is putting 1/4-inch ratchet on it, no pressure, and they are turning. They were not tight at all. They should be torqued, if I recall correctly, 10 Newton meters. Looks like I'd have that memorized by now, but don't quite. It's either 10 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. So that's why I always keep my factory service manuals close by. So get this booger off and get it replaced, and get her back not leaking. Well, aside from none of the bolts being tight on this water pump, they didn't use a water pump gasket, just some orange RTV. And we see how well that worked out for them and how well it sealed. Luckily for me, it's coming off fairly easy. I normally hate this because it takes forever to get it off. Yeah, don't do this, guys. Alright, so we're back with the timing belt job on the 08 Legacy that I'm very not happy with right now. I told the customer before they even towed the car to me that I was going to put
an ASIN kit on it if I was going to do it at all, or factory components straight from Subaru. I don't do Chinese aftermarket junk parts because that's what she told me she ordered originally, some generic Chinese junk off of Amazon or eBay. Said she would return it and give me the ASIN kit and had the car towed to me. So I've been waiting for 2 days now for the parts to come in on this thing. And they show up with the cheap Chinese junk. This is the kit. All Chinese bearings, Chinese tensioner. Has an ASIN thermostat, which I won't use. I want to use only Subaru OE thermostats. And no-name timing belt that has been crimped and bent down, which timing belts are not supposed to be bent down smaller than the smallest pulley they go around. And some cheap cam and crank seal, which I will not be installing because it's got factory seals in it now and looks like they're newer, and I'm not going to put these cheap junky seals in there. The worst part of this is the water pump. Check out the hacky casting on this El Cheapo water pump. This is why I don't use cheap Chinese parts. Flipping junk. Also came with a paper water pump gasket rather than the metal, which I got a spare Subaru metal gasket I'm gonna put on it just because I don't want this thing coming back for leaks. And this is why I don't install cheap Chinese parts. You see that big gap there between the water pump and the tensioner bracket? You see the threads not lining up with the holes? Well, the water pump was made so poorly that flange that's supposed to be flat is going uphill. Here is a correct water pump. You see, flat all the way across, not going uphill. Freaking junk. Well, I got the stupid thing on here. I had to take the right angle grinder and a burr bit and eat the crap out of the water pump here where it's cast wrong. And now we can finally put the tensioner in and everything lines up so we can finish this job. So now they're getting an extra hour of labor added to their bill because they want to bring me cheap parts. Let this sucker eat on it. So here we are at the beginning of day 3 of this project. What should be a 2-hour job is now a 3-day ordeal. I had to put the Gates belt, the old used Gates belt, back on this car because the new Chinese belt was too small. It wouldn't fit. Screwed around with it for an hour trying to get it on and it wouldn't go on. Spent all of 2 minutes getting the Gates belt back on. Bring junk parts, get junk results.
So, got it back together. Had to reuse the old belt, as I said. Bleeding the coolant. And hear that knocking noise? That's that new Chinese junk tensioner. So, probably going to replace that with the old wore-out Subaru tensioner. Not sure, but you can hear it knocking loud as day, and you can see it knocking. Absolute junk. And so, as you see, I was extremely flustered by the end of that job and just ready to get the car out of my sight. Multiple issues that were expected with cheap aftermarket parts. First, you saw the water pump was cast horribly. Typical of cheap Chinese parts. Could not get the time belt tensioner bracket back in place. Had to spend a good 30 minutes with the die grinder and burr bit shaving that water pump down to get everything to line up again where I could bolt everything down. Real pain in the neck. From that point, I had issue with the timing belt, the non-branded timing belt that came in this kit. It was too short. I could not get it on to save my life. I burnt about an hour fighting this thing, trying to get it on. And I ended up, as you saw in the clips, tossed it back in the box and had to put their old Gates belt on. just how it was. They weren't going to buy another belt. The belt they had was incorrect, and we had to get the car running and out of the shop. So did what I had to do. After that, you saw once I got it all back together and got it started, tensioner was no good. It was knocking loudly and was not providing the correct tension for the belt. I told them in a disclaimer I wrote on their ticket, absolutely no warranty on this repair. If you have any issues, faults, failures, it's all on you because parts were provided, just to save my own skin, because the way that tensioner was acting, it very well could throw the timing belt off and wreck all the valves. And I made them clear as day, let them know that this was a high possibility of what was going to happen, unless they wanted to pay the labor to take it all back down, put an NTN Japanese tensioner on it, or put their old NTN Japanese tensioner. I felt bad about taking the parts off. The old parts were original Japanese components, but they were old, so it was, do I keep old Japanese components that are going to fail sooner or later, or do I put Chinese components that might fail tomorrow or might last a while? I don't know. It was, I don't like being put in these situations. That's why I don't like putting on customer supplied parts. So all of that was clear, made clear to the customer. Customer took the car, and that was all there was to it. Well, I spent an extra hour fighting their timing belt that was not the correct length. I spent another 35 minutes, 40 minutes massaging their poorly cast water pump to fit all the components. So I had to add hour and 2/10 labor to their ticket. That's just how it is. I had to burn up my time fighting their cruddy parts. They're going to have to pay for my time. I mean, that's just how it works in this industry. So all in all, I think they ended up paying about $520 for labor and coolant. And had they gone with my original quote, I think originally I quoted them about $720 parts and labor with all factory components. So they saved all of not enough to matter to go with cheap parts and have no warranty on the repair. Had they gone with my stuff, they would have had a warranty on the parts and labor for the repair. But it's just how it is. Some people can't wrap their head around it. I know some people just don't have that money to afford it, and that's just how it is. I don't want to do cheap work. I don't want to do shoddy work. I don't want anything coming back on my name. I don't want to tarnish my reputation. That's why I don't like taking these jobs and I turn them away. I'll refer them to somebody else, but I just can't do it. I mean, there are cases where I help customers on the price of the parts and the labor if there is an issue with not being able quite to pay for it. I'm not super rigid. I am flexible. I do work with people in that regard, but in cases like this, there was no recourse for me. I was already irritated because the customer had lied to me on 2 occasions, brought the car to me under false pretenses, and it just was not what we agreed to. So it is what it is at this point. So that was a little bit of a good example firsthand why I don't like cheap aftermarket parts and why I refuse to use them. Not all aftermarket parts are cheap, and I don't refuse all aftermarket parts. But cases like that, cheap Chinese stuff, is a no-go. I know this is pretty long-winded. Probably going to edit a lot of this down. Hopefully you've stuck around this long. If you have, I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please leave a like, comment below, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Really helps me, helps the channel out. Thank you for watching once again. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.